Hello, and welcome back to another episode of Only a Bag, an Italy travel podcast. I'm Darcy Melton.
And I'm Nathaniel Mellor.
And today we are continuing to talk about weird, cool things in Naples, a bit like we did on last Wednesday's episode. And yeah, Naples is weird, so we're going to tell you about it.
Yeah, we're just kind of picking up where we left off, as if there was really almost no time at all between filming these two episodes or recording these two episodes. That's a fun wink, wink, nudge, nudge. There's very little time in between.
Yes, but before we do start talking about all of that weird stuff, we want to thank everybody who has been following us, leaving us reviews. If you like this podcast and want to follow us, you can do that wherever you listen to this podcast, and you can leave us a review. It helps us a lot in the algorithm, and it makes us feel good about ourselves. If you want to find more information, you can go to onlyabag.com, where we have lots of articles. You can also contact us there if you have any questions. You can also contact us on Only a Bag Podcast on Instagram.
Yes, we can. Or yes, you can. Yes, somebody can.
And if you want to donate to help out the podcast, basically your donations go to help with web hosting or new equipment if we need it. We have great new microphones from donations.
Yeah.
And so, so you can do that at ko-fi.com/onlyabag.
And you can also use affiliate links if you happen to be booking a trip soon, or if you are booking any sort of stays or any sort of sites, tours, anything like that. We have affiliate links in the description. Some things are more specific, like here's what we like, and some of them are just more general. So if you'd like to support the channel and you don't want to necessarily donate, but you're like, I'm okay, yeah, I'll book my trip through you instead of like through something else that you have rewards through potentially, then we would deeply appreciate that as well. So I guess without further ado, jumping into what to do and see in Naples part 2.
Yeah. So we've talked about this. I think we've said this in several episodes. Naples is a wonderful place to just walk around. It's the best way to see things. It's a pretty specific city. So just wandering around is a great way to experience it.
I think it's a great way to experience it, as well as, I don't know, I guess it's one of those things where it's hard. I think Naples, for me, it's always hard. And I think I've said this in multiple episodes. It's always hard to tell people like what to do in Naples because so many other cities have a very specific checklist of 3 or 4 things. And while I think Naples does, we mentioned like the archaeological museum being like a must see kind of thing, I also think that it kind of gets this rep of like, yeah, when you're in Naples, well, you should actually go to Pompeii and you should go to Sorrento and you should go to Capri. It's like,
yes, there's often things taking you outside of the city when there's so much to see inside.
And I think that unfortunately part of it is just, and it's so hard, I think, to, especially as like a travel podcast, for example, I think it's not hard to tell people, just go walk around, but it feels like a cop-out. It feels like, well, we don't really want to do any research this episode. Just go walk around. But it's so hard to explain like what you will experience walking around. And like, I think that when we hear people like, oh, I had a great time in Naples, what'd you do? Honestly, I just explored. It's like, yeah, exactly. You understand. That's it. That's what it's about. So I think that is the, when we say like a walk around, explore, or just kind of just, be out basically. What we do mean is just simply that sometimes it's hard to explore while you're in like a taxi, or if you're just shuttling yourself from site to site.
It's also hard in many cities to just explore. We always use Rome as an example, and it's a wonderful place to wander around, but it's almost impossible to just idly wander around all of Rome unless you're there for a very long time.
Yeah.
And of course, you're not going to wander around all of Naples, but I think in Centro Storico, in Spaccanapoli, which is a neighborhood that we're going to talk about a little bit.
Like a road, actually. Apparently.
A road. Oh, it's just a road.
Just a road, apparently.
Oh, I think of it as a neighborhood. That's
so
incorrect.
do I. And I think because I think to the left and right of it, people still look, we're basically Spaccanapoli, but it's just a road.
Okay. So there, and then the Piazza Dante, is that what it's called? Piazza di Dante?
Piazza Dante.
That's a pretty small area, but in that area, you can just wander around and pop into odd shops and, antique bookshops and weird antiquities places. It's just a very funky little area. Craftspeople, artisans. We've talked about in Spaccanapoli in a previous episode. Not that you'll necessarily be buying these, but people just selling like cigarettes on the street and fried food and like probably their grandma's tort that she made. It's just a very odd, magical place.
Yeah.
So walking around is kind of the only and best way to see that magic.
For sure. No, I think that's the thing. And actually that does segue nicely to, in case you're listening to this being, okay, you've got me. I'm going to walk around. where do I walk around?
Yeah.
The first one, as you mentioned, Spacca Napoli, it actually means Naples splitter, or the street that splits Naples. So it actually is, so it's in Centro Storico and it splits Centro Storico. I looked this up for this episode because I was like, I've never really quite had a firm grasp of this, because when you're in the Centro Storico, you know you're in Spacca Napoli because there are signs everywhere.
Yeah.
And then kind of also to the left and right, though, there'll be a lot of like Spacca Napoli, Spacca Napoli. So I'm like, oh, maybe it's a neighborhood, but it's like a weird parallel, like it runs, east to west rather than like in a circle. But it's the lane, it's the road that sort of splits the old city, not the old city, but Centro Storico.
Okay.
And you can kind of just walk it. I mean, it really is beautiful just to walk that. Eventually, it sort of it does end, but you can kind of walk around a couple of buildings to get to this train station. So it's one of those straight, direct ones. I think it even brings you all the way to Via Toledo or something. So it's a really straight road to kind of just get on and keep walking.
Absolutely.
If you're looking for one. The other one I think we've mentioned in maybe a couple episodes ago, and where to stay, I think is the first time we talked about it, is the Petraio. It is and we've talked about it in a couple of last week's episode. It is basically one of the oldest footpaths in Naples, in the sense that it goes up and down Vomero Hill. So if you're looking, it's it's a hill, so it is very much uphill and downhill. It's not stairs in the traditional sense of staircases. It's more like a stair or two, a flat or slight incline, stair or two, flat or slight incline. So it's a very meandering walk. It's a beautiful view all the way up. While a lot of the gardens on the way up are sort of cloistered or like hidden behind walls, some of them are not. So they're actually quite beautiful, because you do kind of feel like you're in a different time kind of thing. And I think when we walked up, it was summer and it was not that crowded. It felt more like Napolitano sort of people were using it, less so.
Yeah, it wasn't very
tourists.
crowded at all. I mean, there were definitely, I remember hearing people speaking not just Italian,
Right, yeah.
but it wasn't crowded or anything. But it also wasn't completely abandoned. We were the only ones walking up this road.
Exactly. No,
Yeah.
so I think that could be a really, basically a beautiful place to explore. And then, of course, there is always the classic lungomare, the along the water. I would recommend like the along the water, kind of south of the Piazza del Plebiscito, which is like basically Opera House, which we'll talk about in a little bit. And if you go west, yeah, I'm doing that right. If you go west to the Chiaia neighborhood, essentially, that along the water is really beautiful. Going east from the Piazza del Plebiscito is a bit more like a port. It's also fundamentally hard to access, I think, in the sense of you can kind of, but it's very much built for transportation vehicles, things like that, to kind of get people in and out of the port. It's less so like for walking along. A lot of it is gated off. But even if like you're sort of after lunch or something like that, you're just I want to like kind of chill. The walking along the Chiaia sort of waterfront is really beautiful, or Posillipo if you want to go farther out. But all of those are really nice walks. It's just kind of getting a feel for life. But I think the Spacca Napoli is the most like, yeah, that's like harvesting the soul kind of thing. And,
Absolutely.
And of course you can walk around. I mean, Spanish Quarter, things like that. But these are just like walks in mind for like, I want to go somewhere. I want to have a loose destination in mind. I'm happy to get lost on the way there. Just, point me in a direction I'm going to go. Those would be the three I would recommend.
Yeah, I agree. And I think the Quartiere Spagnolo, the Spanish Quarter, I hope I said that right in Italian. Sometimes I listen back to the podcast. I do kind of pronounce Italian well, y'all. But sometimes I'll listen back to episodes and I'm like, Darcy, that was the most American sounding Italian I've ever heard you say.
Well, it's also, I think, if I may just give us some cover, I think it's a bit between the switching from English to Italian is always, I think, difficult if you're not native in Italian. It's also, it can kind of feel a little bit like performative, because I don't know, I think it's one of those things, well, it's actually said this way. I'm like, no, I know. Yeah. But as an American, it's impossible to understand, because I think when we first got here and people would say some word, I'm like, is there any consonants in that word at all? And then they would say it in an American accent. I'm like, oh, okay, now I can actually picture that word and understand how I'm supposed to say it myself with an Italian accent. But so I think sometimes there's a bit of a, like, if I say stuff in a, like, American accent, it's a lot easier for people to understand it. So I feel like that's sometimes I like to give myself a little, like, no, it's not that my Italian's terrible. It's that I'm doing it for you guys. That's what it is.
So before I got us off on that tangent, I was thinking that the Spanish Quarter, of course, you want to walk around there. It's very Naples. But I almost think that Spacca Napoli is, there are regular Napolitano people living in both of these areas, but Spacca Napoli, I feel like maybe has fewer tourists. And again, it's not that big of an area or street, but it's just wild and weird. So definitely Spanish Quarter is awesome, and Spacca Napoli has a similar vibe.
And speaking of Spacca Napoli,
Yeah, so speaking of Spacca Napoli, very close to it is what a lot of non-Italians call Christmas Alley, right?
yeah,
Alley,
I think,
Christmas
yeah.
Lane. Okay, Christmas Alley. People who speak Italian would probably call it Via dei Presepi. Neither of those are its actual name. It's actually called Via San Gregorio Armeno.
Which I guess if you're looking at Google Maps and you're trying to like Christmas Alley, where the heck? It's not. That is not what it's called.
Yes, it's Via San Gregorio Armeno.
See, that's what I'm saying though. Gregorio. It's like, okay, I don't know what you started with, but Gregorio, and you're like, oh my god, the double G. I hear it now.
Greg.
Thank you.
Greg
Yeah.
Street.
Greg Street. Yeah, I can remember Greg Street.
Yeah. So it's in Centro Storico. It's near Spacca Napoli. It's actually near the Napoli Underground, which we're going to touch on very briefly in a second. And in last Wednesday's episode, and possibly in the what is it, the catacombs episode,
Sure.
we'll kind of touch on it. It's near the San Severo Chapel with the weird, creepy bodies that we talked about.
Yeah.
So this is near that. Christmas Street is near the weird, creepy bodies that we talked about.
Those things go hand in hand.
So essentially, it's like a one block street of where the people who build presepe, which are the creches, the nativity scenes, artisans have little shops all along this street where they're creating these little terracotta figures and the nativity scenes. They are insane and incredible and so Naples. So these are made and not exhibited, but they're in the shop windows
And you can purchase them.
and you can purchase them all year round. At Christmas, it gets more festive, of course, but you can go down the street all year. So it's kind of Christmas all year on this street. And some people have described it as similar to like a Christmas village that you'll go to in other parts of the world.
Oh, yeah. I can
But
see that.
there's no mulled wine. There's
No,
there might be
no.
chestnuts at Christmas
Yeah,
time.
a Christmas time for sure.
Yeah.
Oh god, yeah. I was just thinking not like in the summer.
No, not in summer, but I guess a lot of people will go to like specific places in Germany for the Christmas village at
sure,
Christmas
sure.
time. So this has a bit of that vibe. If you happen to be if you're looking for a Christmassy vibe at Christmas time in Italy,
Naples.
in
In Italy.
Naples, this is a good street to go to, and it has them all year. So you can buy them. They basically, the whole creche, the whole nativity scene can be anywhere from like 30 euros to like thousands
Yeah, I
of
was gonna
euros
say, I think-
because they make giant ones. Some of them have a water feature, some of them have electricity. My favorite thing is that not only do these have the classic baby Jesus, Mary,
Gotta have a
Joseph,
baby Jesus
you got
and
the
Mary.
shepherds, you get the angel, all the classics, right? But in Naples, very specifically, and in Campania, and maybe all of southern Italy at this point, but specifically Naples started it and then Campania, they have other classic characters. And so they set the Christ family inside like an urban Italian scene, essentially. So it'll be like the bread baker and the person selling fish and lots of different classic characters.
If I may, it's classic characters from Presepe making, not like Mickey Mouse, not necessarily.
Yes,
Not like
thank you.
IP protected characters.
No.
But more like, I mean, Darcy's like actually.
Actually, no, but I mean the Napolitano, like
But there
Italian
are there are
characters.
lore attached to when you see the bread maker or bread baker, that means something. That's like there's lore attached to that. Specific.
Exactly. There's also they've mixed in like pagan characters
Sure.
essentially. So there's like a Bacchus, the god of wine character. So it's just really cool. It's a mishmash, and they do make these terracotta figurines that don't necessarily go in the creche, but they'll make like pop culture characters.
Oh, yeah, for sure. That
Soccer
makes sense.
players, the royal family.
Anyway, they're not going to get sued for making, and then probably a lot of people that get sued for making. But
Yeah, but they
Keep it
just
on
don't care. Yeah,
keep it on the low,
exactly.
down low.
So you can go buy these cool little odd figurines.
plus, I think if you haven't already mentioned or you're not going to mention, the Presepe have at least typically one cheeky naked person somewhere in the Presepe.
Yes, I can't remember his name. There's a guy I think he's weirdly like a Catalan character somehow. I'm not sure. I think I need to do a lot of research and do a whole episode on these weird little characters. But there's one guy who has his pants down.
Yeah,
I think you only see his butt.
I love
I don't
that.
think you see anything
I just
else.
like that. That's like they're like, well, it's not a done Presepe if you don't see this guy's butt. So we should get on that
I don't
immediately.
think he's in all of them.
I think he's in all of them. You just haven't found them in all of them. I think he's hiding.
So one cool thing I think this is particularly interesting. So essentially, this street dates back to the 3rd century BC when Greeks. No, sorry, that's a different note. I apologize. It dates back to.
I was like, this is an ancient Christmas tradition, like pre-Christ Christmas.
Sorry, but it is pre-Christ. No, it
Oh,
is
okay.
Roman. Sorry, not Greek. It's Roman. So basically, there was a Roman temple to Ceres or
Sure.
Ceres. I don't know how to say her name. So,
Ceres, I think is what we say in English.
Ceres. Okay. So she was a goddess of fertility and the earth, and people brought terracotta statues
Oh, sure.
as basically donations
Yeah.
to her temple, and then of course the street went through lots of different iterations up until I think the 18th century is when Naples really got their whole precipe
Making things like
shindig going on.
we'd be known for something.
Yeah, but since Roman times and the temple of how do we say her
I
name?
think Ceres, because it's
Ceres.
as in like cereal is where we get the word.
Cool. It's been going on. People have been making those little terracotta figurines.
That is wild, though.
I know, isn't that cool?
So if you're around for Christmas, y'all drop in, check it out. Tune in, drop in, check out.
Something
Like
like
that.
that.
Yeah, it's cool. We actually stumbled on it one year without realizing what it was, and it was just kind of fun because it's like I don't know, it's weird. Like we around Christmas time, I think it was cold, and I just remember it to be kind of a neat little place because while it is, especially for those of you who are not religious or not Christian, it doesn't have it's a lot more I think pagan undertones and overtones than Christian specifically. It
I
felt
think so
very
too.
much like sort of I don't know pagan characters I guess, and just I don't know just not even pagan characters. It just had a feel of more that like people just wanted to get together and make dioramas and
Yeah.
needed to figure out a way to get paid for it. And they thought like if we do it with the Christian, I feel like that's like artists back in the day, you know, the Renaissance. They're like I just want to paint, and they're like you can't do that. And they're like what if I paint Christ? And they're like money,
Sure.
just money right there. So I feel like it's the same
Classic.
thing, you know. So yeah, that's maybe probably definitely not how they came about.
I don't know if that is actual historical fact,
But
but
it's Nathaniel's historical fact.
okay.
You're welcome. Please don't take that to the bank. It's worth nothing.
Yeah. So that's Christmas Alley.
And I think you had a one note on Puccinella. What I was curious
Oh
about.
yeah. So speaking of these different characters, basically Puccinella is a character in classic Napolitano history, and he is a person with essentially like a black plague mask is what we would think of it, a long beaked mask and a flowing gown kind of overcoat thing.
Okay.
So you can buy figurines of him. You could also buy a little corno. I don't know why it's called a corno. It's a horn is what that means, but it's a little chili pepper, classic Naples symbol, and it
Yeah.
brings good luck and wards off the evil eye. So you can buy both of these little figurines, little tchotchkes in this alley, and really all over Naples.
I was gonna say like that's probably all over the South. You also mentioned as a fun segue the Sotterranea, I think earlier, the
Yeah,
subterranean.
so very close to this Christmas alley is a Naples underground, Napoli Sotterranea. Anyways,
And I believe we also mentioned this in the catacombs. It's not the catacombs, is
it
what we
is
said.
not
So
the
we're gonna put it in this
catacombs.
episode.
Yes, and that is very confusing because all of that is underground.
Yeah.
It's also, I believe, not the same as what we talked about in last Wednesday's episode, which was the air raid shelters
Correct.
underground.
And the Galleria Borbonica.
Yes, thank
Yes.
you.
Also not that. Yeah.
Also not the same. This, I believe, parts of this were also used as air raid shelters,
That
but
makes sense,
they're not
yeah.
the same
Air raid
location.
shelters.
For the purposes of tourism, they're not the same location.
Okay.
So yes, super cool. Basically, this is what started in the 3rd century BC, where Greeks,
Nice.
where Greeks,
Come into this note.
Greeks basically were quarrying for the tufa stone
Okay.
in order to build up the walls of their city.
Sure. Makes sense. Yeah.
And then Romans eventually, after the Greeks came in and made this very complex aqueduct system in order to bring water up to all of Naples at that
Okay.
point.
That makes sense.
And then it was used, I think, up until the 20th century as supplying water for all of Naples. And then eventually they were like, yeah, we need more than this. We got to figure something else out. So it was kind of defunct in the 20th century. And now you can go and explore the underground. And it's a whole system of different areas. There's I don't understand it. They found a Greek theater underground. And I don't understand how, if the Greeks were using it as a quarry, then I guess maybe they just built a
I feel like
room
this
in
is
there.
insane acoustics, y'all.
It still would have been underground at that point,
Yeah.
I think. So that's
Could be
really cool.
acoustics, actually. Now I'm saying that out loud as a joke, but that it really could be. They're like, this is phenomenal.
Yeah.
Maybe it's like not so echoey. They're like, this is, you know, you get whatever some guy with 8 names that are all the same on the stage, and he's just killing it, and they're
Yeah.
all really
They were
excited.
just quarrying. One guy was singing, and they were
Yeah.
like, "We need to make this a theater,
Like
y'all.
he needs a
Great
job.
acoustics."
Yeah.
And in fact, they recently found a small room off of this theater. So excavation, to my understanding, is still continuing to find different bits of this area. It's really cool. There's a war museum down there, which is why I say it's not the same as
As the Galleria
visiting
Borbonica.
exactly.
Okay.
There's what they call an underground garden. Really, they're just growing plants underground. I think for science.
Okay.
It's interesting. There's a contemporary art museum, a gallery. It's not a whole museum, a gallery in there. It's really wild. Speaking of wild acoustic spaces, do you want to talk about the Napoli Opera House?
Why, Darcy, what a great segue. First off,
you.
apparently garbage acoustics at the beginning. So it has been
Of
redone.
the Opera House?
Yeah. So the violinist, I didn't write his name. His name's like Louis something. Louis Tosche and Louis Tosca. Anyway, after they built the Opera House, this guy comes in and is like, this is garbage. Like, it's good here, but up there, he's like, nobody can hear you. He's like, it's awful. This is awful.
And they didn't think about that when they built
I think
it?
they did. I just think it wasn't necessarily for. They don't get ahead of myself. I wasn't. I think he had a bit of a particular desire for things, and they were like, no, this is for those boxes aren't for people with money. Those are for people who just need to say they went to the Opera House. Which, by the way, and I will get into this in a second, there is a listening only ticket if you actually going to go to the Opera House. So, Opera House, the Teatro di San Carlo. It was actually the Real Teatro di San Carlo, the Royal Theatre of St. Charles. And then, of course, they dropped the Royal from it when Naples, after one of its many revolts, was like, you know what? No, it's the People's Theatre. Obviously, it's only for people with money, but, still the People's Theatre. It is actually the oldest continually operational opera house in the world.
Really?
And I think last week's episode, week before, I mentioned in Italy, which is also true, but in the world, actually older than both Milan's La Scala and Venice's La Fenice, which are also quite old, but this is even older, which I thought was kind of fascinating. And so essentially just kind of speeding through it, it opened in 1737, but a lot of that has been redone. You're looking at me kind
That's
of strange.
not that old.
It is not that old, which
So
makes
we
me
don't have very old opera houses in the world?
I wonder if, and I don't know enough about opera, maybe somebody who's listening that knows more, I don't know how old opera is. So this was because also like a lot of famous operas were written around this time and like debuted here.
Oh, I
So
think of them as so old.
so do I. But I'm like, oh, looking into it, apparently they all of them debuted here. So I'm like, oh, maybe they're not as old as I thought. So that is just for what it's worth. Yeah, I thought that was kind of a fascinating little tidbit. But what was interesting is in 1844 is when it was changed to what it's now, essentially a very gilded gold and red sort of tapestry look, basically.
It's kind of what you think of as theaters.
It is really the quintessential theater. It also used to have a 3,000 person capacity. It's now like 1,400, which is only interesting because going back to the acoustics, I think after a couple renovations and a fire and that they did trim it down a little bit because it was like, okay, this is actually garbage in the back. Maybe that guy was right. So they actually went and sort of made it so it's a little bit better. And then of course, thankfully in 2008 or so, 2009, they renovated it again, added in both air conditioning, sort of more toilets. Apparently there's only like a couple toilets, things like that. Because they're like, we need to modernize. We can't be the oldest and also the worst in the world, which I thought was interesting. Fascinating though. I think there's more just a note kind of showing the sort of just I don't know. I think Naples and art is kind of tied in an interestingly intrinsic way, just in general, despite the fact that like I think Florence is known as a very art city because it had a lot of wealth, or Siena, Venice, things like that, Milan. I think it's interesting how Naples feels almost more like a ground floor from the art. And I only say that because even in the 40s, it was bombed in 1943, I think an Allied air raid. And in October of 1943, they rebuilt it. In December of 1943 is actually when they debuted Puccini's La Bohème. Not debuted, but returned with Puccini's La Bohème in December of 1943. So they were like, from bombing to like, well, no,
they really got that thing up and running.
Yeah, so I think it was interesting because it's kind of the... there's a lot of that, even like during the Renaissance, during wars, it was like how much money was still being pumped into art because they're like, it's like the idea that even in the worst of times, if you can still have a sort of not even escape so much as just but like focus on the arts, it can kind of help
no, you definitely
manage
need
what's
something
happening.
else.
Fascinatingly, I also thought if you've heard of Enrico Caruso, he's a very famous Napolitano opera singer. Just in the world, he's late 1800s when he was born, died early 1900s. So
okay, not a current person.
not a current person.
Okay.
No, but very like famous in the sense of even still now people know. I mean, not still now, but obviously people know Caruso is. But it's like that's like up there with the Saints kind of thing. Like that's famous. But interestingly, when his first ever performances was at this opera house, he was booed while singing La Elixir de Amore. I butchered that, and I would hate that on playback, but it's the Elixir of Love. And he was booed by a section of the crowd, which I thought was just very Napolitano. And he's like, you know what? I'm never coming back to play for you people again. And he didn't. Born in Naples, died in Naples, played all over the world, performed all over the world, and genuinely very famous opera singer. Never again performed in Naples Opera House, which I thought was kind of fascinating. And then for the practical aspects, if you are interested in this, genuinely, you can still go see a show. Opera season is November to July. They do other shows and other ballets and things like that in between. Darcy's like, we're getting close to November. I know.
I just meant that I didn't know it had a season.
Oh, it does.
No, I'm not fancy.
Oh, I am. No, I know. I learned about opera season. I'm like, that's where I'm going now. It doesn't have a dress code if you're curious. So we've talked about it too. You can visit the theater just on a tour if you'd like. If you're just like, I'm not going to go to a show, you can just visit on a tour. There are tickets. We'll put a link in the description, affiliate links. You can also just book separately or go there and book a ticket. It's just exploring it, checking it out. It's a very, very much a old world feel, if that makes sense. It is gilded, gaudy, I don't know. It's like basically even at the time too, they had no when it was first built, and even later they had no curtains on any of the balconies, because the idea was if the royalty, especially the king at the time, wanted to see what people were doing, you were not allowed to hide.
Of course.
So he was able to get in because it was connected at the time, and I don't know if it still is, but it was connected to the Royal Palace of Naples, which is right next door, which I'll get into in a second. And even though it wasn't necessarily for royal use in that sense, it was for still. I mean, it was called the Royal Palace, and then very quickly it became the People's. But I thought that was fascinating, is they were like, no. If he wants to watch you, he's going to watch you. And I'm like, I'm not going to this opera, thank you. However, opera season, November to July. There is no dress code. However, they do have like certain things, no flip-flops, no shorts, things like that are banned. There's no dress code. And I keep saying however, but it's not like you're rewarded for a good dress code, but like if you want to rent a tux, you are more than welcome to rent a tux. There will be people there in tuxedos. I think it's one of those things. There are a lot of season ticket holders that still are old money Naples, like an old Napolitano money, who still go and who still dress up. So you would not be out of place at all if you dress up, especially an opening night, especially like one of those first performances. You would definitely fit in well.
I really want to do that.
It is money. I looked at the price for some of the cheaper tickets. It's a couple €100 per ticket for opening night. They get cheaper when it's not opening night. They get cheaper when it's not opera, when it's like ballet or something. Like they're like, no, this is not a ballet house. But if we have to, we have to. I don't know. Okay. They're very, interesting about it. But I thought that was fascinating. So if you are interested, that is still open and operational and there. Yeah,
super cool. So if we take the secret passage over to the... What is it? The Royal Palace?
The Royal Palace. That is something we haven't actually been to. I feel almost a little ashamed running this podcast, or partially running this podcast, not knowing that you could actually go inside. We've walked past it like 100.
It doesn't look like a place you can go in.
It does not. Right. It's in the Piazza del Poblaciento, and it actually looks very similar, not unlike the Doge's Palace in Venice, which is essentially when you go to the St. Mark's Square. I believe all of that around you is the Doge's Palace. Mm-hmm. It doesn't look like something you can enter. That looks like just, I don't know, things.
To be fair, I think to me the Palazzo Pitti in Florence also looks like a building that you're not allowed to enter.
100%. Yeah.
But you obviously can.
No, and I think that's the thing. We would not be very good back then. We're like, no, we just can't enter it. Why not? Well, we cannot enter it. No, we're not. This is not a building for us.
We were like the peasant class. Yeah, it was not a building for us.
So that is, I just thought that was interesting in terms of, solely just in terms of, if you want to visit, it is there. It's fascinating. They have gardens, which are currently under renovation, unfortunately. They have the royal apartments and this and that. It was basically... I wish I knew more about Napolitana history, and I want to, but then it's also like it's going to take too much time, because the Castel Nuovo, which I don't have too many notes on, was built for the Aragonese rulers. So they came in, was like, we don't like any of these other castles you have, build us a new one.
Because they have many.
Right. And then, but even later, this royal palace was also used by ruling classes. I believe partly the Bourbons, and as well as I think earlier the Spanish, and then even later the Bourbons built one in Caserta. So I'm like, you guys just... Is it just you don't like other people's older castles? Is it like you don't... I don't understand. And I know part of it is obviously, new styles, and you can't renovate an old castle to be a new style kind of thing. And maybe also like a castle made sense when people might shoot a cannonball at you, but once it kind of gets past a certain point, you're like, well, cannonball is going to tear through anything, and they should not get that close. So not entirely sure, but it's interesting. They do have, currently though, because it was basically built in 1600s, and then from essentially 1830s, 1837 specifically onwards, it was burned down in a fire and rebuilt. So everything you see is 1800s. And the eastern half actually is now the National Library of Naples, which you can enter if you're curious. There's papyruses from Herculaneum, all sorts of old things. That's just like a fun one.
Super cool.
Yeah, but it's open to the public, free to the public. It's an actual library. It's the third largest in Italy behind Florence and Rome. And I believe we tried to enter the Florence one and we were turned away because we did not have a library card. So I thought that was very interesting because you needed to like either be a student or a resident or something like that to get one.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure when we looked it up, maybe this is incorrect, but you had to be a student, a professor, you had to be in education or a researcher or a resident.
Yeah. And
I don't think just anybody could go in or get a library card in order to go in.
I believe I think that's true. And with this one, though, thankfully, it's open to the public. It's not necessarily attached to like a college.
That is super cool.
And that being said, to segue, what is attached to a college is the botanical gardens. There are botanical gardens in Naples. If you Google Naples Botanical Gardens, you will in fact see the Naples, Florida Botanical Gardens, which I think is fascinating. It's a show of, I don't know, why does the one in Naples, Florida show up before the one in Naples, Italy? I don't know. The one that is literally hundreds of years older. The one in Naples, Florida was founded in 1995. I don't think that's important, but I looked at that going, I know, and I looked at that thinking, that's interesting. That's much, oh my God, Naples, Florida. Oh my God, this is ridiculous information. Point is, in Naples, Italy also has one much, much, much older, and it is open to the public. It is technically attached to a college. It's the Federico University Federico II. So it's technically attached to the college in the sense of it's mostly for college students and professors to do research. They do research there. They do a lot of
like on the plants,
but also like in a lot of it is also like it looks like heirloom plants, especially in the Campania, trying to figure out like what breeds are resistant to these things, or not these things, but certain things. Essentially, trying to figure out like this sort of basically do any of these heirloom breeds that are currently that they have sort of saved, are they resistant to something that might wipe out like corn, or that might wipe out
doing
potatoes?
Some Mendel P research up in there.
Exactly.
Super cool.
So I thought that was really fascinating, but it is genuine. It's filled with like exotic tropical desert plant. It's really beautiful. If you just need to kind of hit to a green space that isn't isn't a park specifically, but it's like a botanical garden, kind of seems fun, I would check it out. But I would not necessarily assume it's like the one in Brooklyn or something like that, where it's very Italian. It's very much, we have a park, we have a botanical garden, you want to come see it, come look at plants. But it's not like, it doesn't seem like full of activities and things to do. It seems very much for the teachers to kind of bring their students.
You do have to pay to get in, right?
You do have to pay to get in.
Okay, just to clarify.
Yes. And I was speeding through it, y'all. I was hoping I didn't go too fast. But that was, we just went on to hit the ends of the last couple things. And if I may, it's just a last note before I'm done with my talking, is that this is just a really small portion of the things that are in Naples. There are tons of galleries, there are tons of museums. We only chose a couple that were kind of interesting, or at least not like one another. We will talk about Caserta later. I mentioned this episode. We're going to talk about in the day trip episode, actually, because it is its own sort of thing. We'll talk about Cume, the Flegrei fields, the Campi Flegrei, which also has its own museum. But essentially, when people, again, that idea of like, well, what do I do in Naples? It's like, what do you not do in Naples is a better question. And I think there's also that kind of thing, I guess throwing out there too. When we went in Edinburgh in Scotland, we went to the National Museum, I think it was.
I think that's what it's called.
And it was such a phenomenal museum.
Incredible. I know this is not a Scotland podcast, but if you're going to Edinburgh, definitely go to I think it's called the National Museum.
It's free to enter, which I thought was phenomenal. I mean, it was so many, like, part of it was interactive, had a lot of information. It was like we went, I think, 4 or 5 times because, I mean, after a floor, we were wiped out because we just read everything until, like, it was just, it felt like so much, and it was so well curated. And I will say with Italian stuff, it can be not that. Yeah. It can really, and I mean that, like, and with all love, it could just be kind of like, not that. Like, they're like, we put all the old stuff in a room for you to look at. I'm like, okay, what am I looking at? They're like, oh no, I have no idea either. But like, you want to look at it, it's there. It's like some pots we found. So it's a little like, okay. I mean that in a loving way. We've been to a lot of museums, and there are some obviously that are very professional and do take time to like meticulously detail what you're looking at. But I think sometimes it's so many things that they're just like, I don't know, man. Coin number 4,000. Okay, we found that in the cracks of the grout when we redid the road at Via Toledo. I don't know what to tell you. So I think I don't know. I just hit it too because it really is just like dripping in history, and you can't really go wrong if you're remotely interested in history or in like anthropology. I think honestly, if you're interested in people, it's a very people-based thing. There was a quote I read apparently that they attributed to a classic Italian quote. I don't know if it actually is. That sounds like something somebody made up, but it was Rome is the heart of Italy, but Naples is the soul. And I'm like, I love that for definitely something like
it feels
Napolitano.
true though.
Yeah. And then Milan's like the brain. I don't know. It's very analytical up there in the north.
Yeah.
That's the
Interesting,
word
that
for
one.
it.
That's a heavy, what's the word? Loaded.
Yeah, it
That's
is.
a loaded one. Alrighty.
So with all that being said, thank you all so much for listening to me talk. And for Darcy talking, but I didn't want to thank you for listening to her talk. That felt weird.
Thank you for listening to me talk. And what are we talking about next episode?
We're going to talk about day trips in the next
Yes.
episode. We're going to be splitting them up by day trips water and day trips ruins.
Ooh, I like it.
Thank you. I thought it'd be fun.
All right, so we're going to talk to you about that on Friday. Tanti abbracci.